Yet it's Erev Purim, Parsha Tetzaveh. There's something about the way we dress.
Yes, it seems a lot of our Parsha is focused on clothing.
So this week, Parsha Tetzaveh, like I said, there's so much emphasis on the clothes that the Kohanim wear, on the uniform that the servants of God in the Mikdash and the Mishkan had to wear. And one has to ask himself, why is there so much emphasis on these clothes, on what they had to wear? You know, I thought that in Judaism, that in Yiddishkeit, we don't judge a book by its cover. It's not about the outside of a person, it's more about the inside of a person. So why is there such a big emphasis on what they wear? And let me even make the question a little bit bigger by asking, do we even know what Moshe Rabbeinu used to wear? What was his dress code? Do we even know the Leviim's dress codes, who used to guard the Mikdash on the outside and also had other activities in the Mikdash? Do we know what they used to wear? Why is there such a big emphasis on what the Kohanim would wear in the Mikdash and in the Mishkan?
Well, Sefer HaChinuch actually brings two different reasons here for the clothing. I'd say the obvious one is that the Kohanim are part of what every person sees when he comes to the Mikdash. Just like you have the walls beautiful, you want to have the Kohanim beautiful. It's part of the impact that the place is supposed to have upon you. You walk into the Mikdash, you're supposed to be in awe. Every detail there is perfect. Everything, including the clothing of the Kohanim. But he brings another reason, which is not about the people seeing the Kohanim, it's about the Kohanim themselves. And to understand this, maybe let's think about clothing in general. When we go to a meeting, we don't usually go in a bathing suit. And why is that? Are we hiding the fact that sometimes we go swimming? Being in a bathing suit or being in pajamas is also part of who we are. But when we're going into a meeting, we're trying to put a focus on a certain aspect of ourselves, the business aspect for that business meeting. And therefore we dress accordingly because it puts us in the mood. It helps us focus ourselves on that aspect of ourselves we're trying to bring out. As people, we have many sides and many aspects, and so do Kohanim. But when the Kohen comes in to serve in the Mikdash, we want to make sure that he's able to focus fully on his duty there, on being the representative of HaKadosh Baruch Hu and being the representative of Am Yisrael. And to do that, he has to have the perfect clothing which helps him achieve his goal. You know, in Chassidut, the term lelbוש, clothing, is brought very often as a spiritual term, and it has two sides to it. On the one hand, lelבוש is covering. It's covering something. You don't see what's behind the lelבוש. But on the other hand, lelבוש at the same time is an expression. It's covering your full self, but it's expressing a certain aspect of you. Lelבוש, clothing, covers up certain aspects, but it's also revealing others. We're not pretending to be something we're not. We're not covering ourselves up with clothing to pretend to be something. We're putting on clothing to help us focus on that certain aspect. This is why the Kohanim wear their special clothing for both sides. On the one hand, to bring out that inner aspect that they want to be able to focus on while working in the Mikdash, and at the same time have everyone else around them who sees them help them focus on where they need to be, and together to achieve the place we all need to be at when coming to serve in the Beit HaMikdash.
Yes, exactly. And it's interesting you mentioned the chinuch. He also touches here one of the most important and famous rules we have, that that the heart follows the actions, that sometimes you take a meaningless act without a meaning, without an intention in it, just in order to follow that up later on with a meaning, to add that meaning into the actions you do. And as he explains in other places, that the actions we do in our life put in meaning to what we do, and that's why a person should deal and should act in meaningful things in order to have a meaningful life. Taking back to the clothes we wear and to the dressing that the Kohanim had, obviously, like you were saying, when you go to an important meeting or you have an important event, you want to dress up to that event because you want to go up to that level and have the meaning and have the impact of that level on you. And the same thing, we see that with Shabbos, with the clothes we wear in Shabbos. We see that with Chagim. We see that on Yom Kippur, when many people wear a kittel and dress appropriately for that day. And it brings a question to mind, as we are on Purim, is, so in that case, we know there's a big minhag to dress on Purim in costumes. So why is the minhag to dress in a meaningless costume? If the whole idea in Judaism is to use these external tools, to use this external appearance in order to elevate ourselves and to bring ourselves up. So tell us to dress in a costume that will fit into that meaning and will add that meaning. What's the idea of telling us to dress in a meaningless dressing, in a meaningless costume?
That's a great question, and it actually always always bothered me. We talk about Purim as the day where Nichnas Yain Yatsa Sod, where we reveal our inner selves. And how do we do that? By covering ourselves up with crazy costumes. I would almost say the definition of a costume is that it's not what you'd expect. Otherwise, it's not a costume. You can't just come dressed up as yourself. By definition, it's supposed to be something else, something absurd, something funny. How is that supposed to help you reveal your inner self? And I think maybe this is the balance to what we were saying. On the one hand, in most of the year, we don't wear costumes. Most of the year, we try to use that external aspect to help us drive that inner side. But sometimes we get so caught up in that external appearance, we forget to take care of the real thing. You know, there's this saying by Kotsk, you need to learn 3 things. You need to learn how to scream out loud in complete silence. You need to learn how to bow down while standing up. And you need to learn how to be able to be alone even when you're in the city square. And what they're trying to say is that sometimes when I have that external aspect, when I'm screaming out loud, my heart doesn't have to scream anymore because, you know, I hear my voice and it's really impressive. And I'm so impressed by how strong I'm screaming. I don't need to really do anything anymore. So if I remove that external action, if I try to scream without actually screaming, suddenly there's this emptiness and I have to fill it with an inner scream. And I think in the same way, that's what's happening with costumes. All year, we're wearing some sort of costume. Sometimes it's this costume, sometimes it's that, and they're not negative. They're good. They help us reach where we want to reach. But sometimes all we are is that costume and when we lose that inner side. So we exaggerate. We make a crazy costume. We make it obvious that what we're wearing is costumes. And that, in a way, rips apart that external costume because it's just a joke now and suddenly leaves room for that inner self to come out. In a way, on Purim, we're sort of making fun of ourselves all year. We're saying, you know, those costumes are great, but it's all a costume. It's a joke. Is there anything really happening behind there? Did I make sure that I wasn't only walking around with a great costume and giving a great impression, not on others, on myself? You know, look how great I am. Did I really stop and look inside? Am I really where I want to be? Is my inner self really reaching that point? And that's what Purim's about. And putting on those costumes rip apart the costume that we're wearing all the time and allow us to bring out that inner self.
Beautiful, exactly. And as we mentioned several times in the channel and in our talks in the past, we have a saying in our field that says, fake it till you make it. Sometimes it's a positive thing, so you have to fake it in order to be in a certain place. Sometimes it's a terrible thing. And obviously, when it gets too much, when it goes out of hand, it's a terrible thing. So Purim is like taking that expression of fake it till you make it to the extreme in order to tell us, okay, stop faking it. Start being really you. Start finding out, figuring out who you really are. Whether it's with the external costume and whether it's on an inner level of Nichnas Yain Yatsa Sod, that when the wine comes in, the secrets come out, the true personality comes out on many different levels. But we mentioned at the beginning of the talk, Moshe Rabbeinu, interestingly enough, the first person that we know that actually wore a mask is Moshe Rabbeinu, as when he came down from Har Sinai, Karano Panav, he had to put on a mask. Am Yisrael couldn't handle the brightness, the shining that was coming from Moshe Rabbeinu, so he had to wear a mask. Many different levels for that mask, and it goes way deeper than that, but we're out of time. And if you've been paying attention from the beginning of the clip, then you probably would have noticed that something has changed throughout the clip. And if you haven't paid attention, then go back and look, because some external things have changed. And this external change was made in order to support this idea, focusing on the inner message. And so we hope this external change did help you to pay more attention to the message we were trying to give over.
Shkoyach, you should have a great Purim in which you find and reveal that inner self.
Amen. Shkoyach to you too. Purim Sameach, and Mitzvah 30 days is Pesach. We got to start preparing. More Talking Torah videos on different topics. Check out our YouTube channel.